and knowledge of the absolute, text number 28. Yesham twantakatam papam jananam punya karmanam dedvandva mohan nirmukta vajante mam drida vrataha. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. Prabhupada's purport. Those eligible for elevation to the transcendental position are mentioned in this verse. For those who are sinful, atheistic, foolish, and deceitful, it is very difficult to transcend the duality of desire and hate. Only those who have passed their lives in practicing the regular principles of religion, who have acted piously, and who have conquered sinful reactions, can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And gradually they can meditate in trance on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the process of being situated on the spiritual platform. This elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness in the association of pure devotees. From the association of great devotees, one can be delivered from delusion. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.2 that if one actually wants to be liberated, he must render service to the devotees. Mahat sevam dwaram ahor vimukte. One who associates with materialistic people is on the path leading to the darkest region of existence. Tamo dwaram yoshitam sangi sangam. All the devotees of the Lord transverse this earth just recover the conditioned souls from their delusion. Impersonalists do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of God's law. Unless one is reinstated in his own constitutional position, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Personality or to be fully engaged in his transcendental loving service with determination. So the text again, Yesham twantakatam papam jananam punya karmanam edvanva mohan nirmukta vajante mam drida vrataha. Translation, persons who have acted piously in previous lives and this life, whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Dhiramane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskatyade Satarane. In the previous verse, Lord Krishna has mentioned Ischa Dvesha Samutena Dvandva Mohana Bharata Sarge Antiparandava. Ichta dvesha smutena dvandva samohena bharata sarabhutani samoham sargayanti parantapa. That all, O son of Bharata, sign of Bharata, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities arisen from desire and hate. And as Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, basically, our problem is that we want to become God, and we hate the fact that we can't do it. Therefore, we like people who tell us how wonderful we are, and we dislike people who tell us we're not so wonderful. So everyone wants to think themselves to be wonderful, if not the most wonderful, in this universe. So this is called delusion, because Lord Krishna has already explained to us that we're not the body, therefore we may have the most wonderful body in the universe, namely Lord Brahma, but that doesn't mean we're the most wonderful, because we remain a 1/10,000th size of tip of hair size soul. Now the question is whether we want to continue on with our dreaming how wonderful we are, rather than to find out how wonderful Krishna is. Now, to find out how wonderful we are, we're inventing so many methods. But the result is that more or less we're just wasting our time. As I've given that analogy, a little child may be playing on the bank of on the shore of an ocean, constructing a sandcastle, imagining that she or he is the lord of the sandcastle. But eventually the parent will come and take the child away, and the ocean will come and wash over the sandcastle, and it'll disappear. Similarly, we're constructing sandcastles in the material world, which eventually disappear. And in the meantime, we're claiming to be the lord of those sandcastles, the proprietor, the controller, and enjoyer of different sandcastles in the material world, which will eventually get washed over. So this is called delusion. Basically speaking, the problem is that people are interested in how to advance their delusions. Therefore, when Shukadeva Goswami was speaking to Maharaj Parikshit, he was very happy to find out that Maharaj Parikshit was interested to find out what was his duty, considering the fact that he was about to die. Now, Srila Prabhupada tells us that Parikshit Maharaj, he had 7 days left to live. So he was fortunate, because at least he knew how many days left he had to live. But of course, we don't know if we're going to live for another moment. No one knows how long they're going to live. Although no one stays here for very long, especially in Kali Yuga, still, Yudhisthira Maharaj, when he was speaking to his father in the form of a yaksha, his father Yamaraj, who had taken the form of a yaksha, and asking him questions. One of the 100 questions that the yaksha asked Yudhisthira Maharaj is what the most amazing thing is. Of course, the conditioned soul thinks that they're the most amazing thing. But Yudhisthira Maharaj disagreed. He said, Ahani, Ahani, Bhutani, Gacchanti Yamalayam, Shesha Stavar Ichanti, Kimastaryam Atakparam. Oh, by the way, if you can put on your video, that would be good. It's much more enlivening to talk to a living being than to talk to a name. If you've ever given a class of a group of names, you'd understand what I'm talking about. So if you can, please put on your video. If it's not too embarrassing, or you have enough bandwidth in for your internet connection. So Maharaj Yudhisthira said that the most amazing thing is that at every moment we see so many living entities are entering into the jaws of death. For those who stay behind, they believe that they're going to live here, maybe not forever, but certainly past Lord Brahma's disappearance. Lord Brahma only lives for 311 trillion, 40 billion years, but we'll live way past that. So this is part of our delusion, is that not aware of the fact that we're a spiritual being and that by nature we should be under the bliss potency of Krishna and living a life of full awareness of how wonderful Krishna and everything, everyone in relation to Krishna are. Instead, we're trying to survive because this body we think is all in all, and things in relation to this body is all in all. But in the spiritual world, one does not consider oneself very important because one is aware of how wonderful everyone else is. In other words, if one is in love with everyone and everything, because one sees everyone and everything in relation to Krishna, then automatically one feels very humble. The humblest devotee in the spiritual world is Srimati Radharani, because she has the most love for everyone. Therefore, everywhere she looks, she's in love with everything because she sees everything in relation to Krishna. Therefore, since she sees how wonderful everything is, she thinks herself in comparison very insignificant. And the material world, as it says here, desire and hate. One looks around the material world thinking, this person is better than I am, how can I surpass them? And this person is trying to keep me from surpassing them, how can I remove them? So it's the exact opposite of the mentality in the spiritual world. To correct that mentality, there's the process as outlined here. Now, it is also mentioned in the purport that there's persons who do not want to correct that process. As a matter of fact, they want to enter more and more into delusion. And the quickest way of entering into more and more delusion is to engage in sinful activity. In other words, sinful activity is the cause of our delusion. And to correct that, one has to chant, well, one has to follow religious principles. Now, in the material world, basically speaking, it's the place where everyone is trying to imagine that they're either Radha or Krishna, as mentioned many times, not only by me, but by Srila Prabhupada. And all the 8,400,000 species of life, everyone is trying to become either Radha or Krishna, or Romeo or Juliet, or Tarzan and Jane, or Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse. This is the place of imagining that we're Krishna or Srimati Radharani. The problem is that the main method of doing that is sinful. In other words, the more one is engaged in illicit sex, then the more one becomes deluded, the more one's ego grows, that I'm actually the controller and enjoyer. Then one will naturally have to eat things like meat in order to maintain one's energy. In order to eat meat, one has to take intoxication to aid the digestion, because the human beings don't have a digestive power mostly, unless you're Bhimasena. Their digestion is rather weak compared to the animals. Therefore, to supply energy to the digestion, they generally take intoxication, and then they imagine all kinds of things, speculate about all kinds of things. When one is intoxicated and full of lust, then everyone looks beautiful. Therefore, religious life means to gradually regulate one's activities in the material world. And the only way of doing that is to really live a regulated life and develop the opposite qualities, namely austerity, mercy, truthfulness, and cleanliness. Cleanliness doesn't mean only external cleanliness, but also internal cleanliness. Do not desire more than one's capacity to gratify the senses. Sense gratification is there in order to maintain the body, but excessive sense gratification is not desirable. Therefore, in human form of life, the leaders, everyone has to at least engage in basically religious principles. When the society doesn't engage in religious principles, it no longer becomes a human society. It becomes a society of mudhas. Mudhas think that if my stomach is full, the day has been successful. If I can somehow or another gratify my senses, then my day was well spent. But if one can work under superior direction, of course, in this age, superior direction is lacking. Practically speaking, the only real superior direction is within religious organizations. But even within religious organizations, generally they're lacking in the complete understanding of what religious principles are. Nor do they equip their followers, generally speaking, in avoiding bad association or giving them the spiritual power by which they can conquer over their senses. Conquer over the senses means to accept the means by which we can control the senses and avoid having them control us. In other words, something superior to sense gratification. So we know that our shelter in the Kali Yuga is the chanting of the holy name. We may endeavor to control our senses, in other words, not to fall victim to lust or anger or greed, by taking shelter of superior knowledge, but knowledge in itself won't save us unless the knowledge connects us to Krishna. We may theoretically know that satisfying unnecessarily or in an unregulated way lust, anger, or greed is not either materially or spiritually healthy. But without a higher taste, one cannot go on avoiding sense gratification. So as we know, in the higher taste in this age is offenselessly chanting the holy name. But offenselessly chanting the holy name begins with Trinad Api Sunichena, humility. And humility can only be there if we don't identify ourselves or others with their gross or subtle bodies. Otherwise, if we identify ourselves or anyone else with their gross and subtle body, we'll always be comparing whether I'm better or worse than them. If we're better than others in the material concept of life, we become proud. If others are better than us in the material concept of life, we become envious. And by the nature of the material energy, when we become proud, then we become more under the control of our senses eventually, like in the Daksha Yajna. Who can imagine how much austerity Daksha Maharaj had performed in order to become the chief Prajapati within the universe. Inconceivable. For someone to get empowered to have 10,000 children or more, you have to be quite empowered by the material energy. Unfortunately, he became envious of Lord Shiva, and that created a big problem for himself and for others. Because he was misidentifying himself after so much austerity, so much penance, he misidentified himself as an independent personality apart from Lord Krishna and apart from Krishna's devotees. He compared himself to Lord Shiva, thinking himself to be more important, not seeing how Lord Shiva, from the material point of view, is more exalted than Daksha, but certainly from the spiritual point of view, he's the greatest devotee, Vaishnava Yata Shambhu. And therefore, the result was Daksha, although he was so exalted, because of becoming envious against the Vaishnava, he wound up having the head of a goat. Now, if someone gets the head of a goat, after being the chief Prajapati within the universe, it's quite humbling. Could you imagine if you looked in the mirror one day, and instead of seeing your beautiful face, we saw the head of a goat? Now, having the head of a goat doesn't mean we can eat anything and everything. We just have the head. We don't have the body. So we don't win very much. And even if we're the most beautiful goat on the block, it's not very attractive to most people. So Daksha became humbled and therefore he made some progress, but not enough to actually assure the steady advancement in spiritual life. He at least realized that the great difficulty that he was placed into when Virabhadra, the demon sent by Lord Shiva, cut off his head and replaced it with a goat. He realized it was mercy because he was on the path, due to his pride, of committing more and more offenses. Now we may think, well, I'm not offending Lord Shiva. I don't even believe in Lord Shiva. How can I offend him? But the fact is, life in the material world means offending practically everyone. Unless we're at least theoretically conscious of the fact that everyone engaged in devotional service is respectable, at least. As it is said in the Nectar of Instruction, Krishneti yasya giritam manasadriyeta dikshasti chat pranitibhi shabhajantam isham shushu shaya shabhajanam ananya anya indati sunyam hridaya usipta sangalabhya. That one should mentally honor the devotee who chants the holy name. One should cooperate with those who are initiated. Initiated means, basically speaking, that one who's trying to give up their false ego and trying to follow the orders of superior authority. And one should faithfully serve the pure, unalloyed devotee who is advanced in undeviated devotional service and his heart is devoid of the propensity to criticize others. For instance, we're advised to read Srila Prabhupada's books. Now, we think these are books written by a person who's passed away, and therefore they're like from another generation. We're wrong. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, he reasons ill who thinks that Vaishnavas die, for thou art living still and sound, that Vaishnavas die to live, and living spread the holy name around. So Srila Prabhupada is as present in his books as he would be if we personally associated with him in a physical form. As a matter of fact, the Vani is more important than the Vapa. Although a Vani may show us the expert example of how a pure devotee lives in the material world and preaches Krishna consciousness to others, but Vani, we can also see that if we have the proper mood and vision. And at the same time, it can be with us in all places, at all times, under all circumstances, if we take the trouble to study it. So it is our, especially in ISKCON, considering the exalted example of Srila Prabhupada and the expert preaching that he's done, and assimilating the philosophy and presenting it to us in a manner we can understand, it's very important for us to study these books, the books left by Srila Prabhupada, so that we can actually utilize them in our relationships, especially in devotional service to Krishna, in relationship to the devotees, and understanding the great need to help the non-devotees become devotees, and our great need to avoid the things, the persons and things that draw our minds away from Krishna, but especially the association with materialistic people is the path of destruction, as mentioned in this verse. That there's nothing that will degrade us faster than association with worldly-minded persons. Of course, when we preach, when we try to help the innocent, we're not taking their association, but instead we're trying to give Prabhupada and Krishna's association. Therefore, when we're giving Krishna's association and Srila Prabhupada's association, then the result is we also get their association. And therefore we won't be affected by other association. On the other hand, if we don't try to help the innocent persons, and then the result is that we'll become insensitive to reality. We may think we're something special, and in one sense, devotees are special. But on the other hand, they're special, especially if they sincerely try to help the innocent. Because unless someone like Srila Prabhupada or his representatives had come to help us, we wouldn't be here either giving this class or listening to it. Therefore, atmo pamyena sarvatra samam pashati arjuna sukham vadukam yogi paramamataha. He is a true yogi who sees the true equality of all living entities, both in their happiness and distress. So one realizes by the process of devotional service that we're happy because of the mercy given to us by others. And others are distressed because either they have not received such mercy or they have not accepted such mercy. So we also have a tendency to become distressed from the material point of view, because we have to practice we have to understand, we have to accept mercy given to us in the form of these instructions, especially by Srila Prabhupada, so that we can elevate ourselves by this process, and especially in our relationships with the devotees, with Krishna, with the innocent, and with the non-devotees, learning how to give good association, and at the same time avoid bad association. We can associate with even with Krishna in very happy Krishna consciousness, or we can go to Krishna in different types of moods. As we've heard that famous song, my dear Krishna, give me a house, give me a wife, give me a color TV, Om Jai Jagadisha Hari. Or a house by the sea. Om Jai Jagadisha Hari. We can approach Krishna as our Santa Claus that I missed out in my childhood. Santa Claus never came down the chimney and gave me everything I want, but now I have a big Santa Claus. Well, I don't have to wait for Christmas. He can give me the gifts even before. Or we can approach Krishna as the most loving personality, our best friend, and enter into a relation with him because Krishna exists simply in a relationship of love and service. Krishna has unlimited love, and when we give him a little of our love, then we can experience his unlimited love. So it's a very good exchange for us, at least. And it doesn't require much. It requires some understanding, proper understanding. And that can come by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through the chanting of the holy names. But the chanting has to be done offenselessly as much as possible in order to glimpse at least what actual devotional service means. Without getting a glimpse of what pure devotional service means, or I should say, if we do get a glimpse, that inspires us to go on. As the outline is explained here, we can, if we just can glimpse the different stages of devotional service, that will inspire us to try to gradually go from one stage to the next. To appreciate the value of austerity, so when it's time for Ekadasi, we don't become morose. To appreciate the value of cleanliness, so that when it's time to eat, I don't look at my hands thinking, well, I washed them a couple of hours ago, so they must be clean. Why should I take the trouble walking all the way to the sink and washing them again? Or mercy, when we have an opportunity to engage in book distribution, or Harinam, or Prashadam distribution, or just to tell the devotee, or to come to class and listen to the devotees tell their realizations about Krishna. So give the devotees some mercy by hearing attentively what they have to say and appreciating it, encouraging them, or giving the non-devotees, those who are not understood their relation with Krishna, an opportunity to make some spiritual advancement. Or giving our mercy by assisting devotees in their spiritual advancement. It's not that only the non-devotees are innocent, we're also innocent, hopefully. Because we can also understand more about Krishna if we have the proper attitude. And truthfulness. Real truthfulness is to admit, to give up our false ego and admit that we're actually only 1/10,000th the size of Tibetan size, and that our only hope is to satisfy Krishna and his representatives. If we actually associating with Krishna and his representatives by taking shelter of Srila Prabhupada's instructions in his books, and taking shelter of the super soul within our heart, and trying to serve the devotees, and especially through chanting Hare Krishna, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, worshiping the deities, serving the devotees, and trying to make the atmosphere spiritual in which we live. You know, like, for instance, make a schedule during the day so that we know what we're supposed to do and we don't become lazy thinking, well, I have nothing to do, I might as well go to sleep. No, we should try to keep active, and that way we'll be truthful in our identity, that we're simply Krishna's servant. We may not be perfect servants, but at least we should remember that we are Krishna's servants and try and face our daily obstacles in that consciousness. Then if we have these qualities, then we can live piously. Piously means to engage in devotional service. Practically speaking, outside of devotional service, there's practically no piety in this world. We may help a little old lady cross the street, but if her objective is to go to the store and buy a steak for her family, that is not a very productive way of spending our time in pious activities, because then we get part of the karma for her buying the steak. On the other hand, if we're on Harinam chanting, or distributing books or prasadam, or doing some service in the temple, doing some service to the devotees, or even our house, if we're worshiping Krishna in our altar, or a picture of Krishna, this is the ultimate pious activities. The result of that is that we should be able to associate with Krishna. Ajamil, in his boyhood, he was a dutiful Brahmin, which meant that he was associating with Vishnu. One cannot be a Brahmin, a real Brahmin, unless one is associating with Vishnu and doing service to Vishnu. Therefore, by the cultivation of knowledge of Krishna consciousness through his service as a Brahmin when he was a boy, at the time of death, by good fortune and by Krishna's arrangement, he had named his son Narayan. And therefore, at the time of death, he was in great feeling calling for his son Narayan. But then by the way memory works, by the way Krishna works, he also remembered his activities in worshiping Narayan as a boy. And therefore the Vishnu Dutas came to save him from the Yamadutas. Therefore, this process of devotional service is so nice that it never goes in vain. And if we even make some progress in religious life, and by performing devotional service, then gradually, we'll be able to conquer over sinful reactions, as explained here. Conquering sinful reaction doesn't mean we take a sword and we cut the sinful reaction out. The sinful reactions are quite subtle. Srila Bhakti's Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada used to say, I believe that in the morning, we're supposed to beat our minds with shoes. And in the evening, we're supposed to beat it 100 times with a broom. Now, I think that he meant that figuratively, or else we'd have a lot of unconscious devotees who wouldn't be able to do very much devotional service. And they certainly have a lot of bruises on their heads. But what it means is that neglecting materialistic desires as something insignificant because of the higher taste we've experienced in Krishna consciousness, because of our faith in the process can bring us to a higher taste. Therefore, we neglect fulfilling the lower desires that are entering into our minds. And that way we conquer over them by focusing our minds upon Krishna and pure devotional service. And then Krishna will eliminate those unwanted desires and activities from our lives. That's what he promises. He'll give us the intelligence if we perform devotional service as steadily as possible and as enthusiastically as possible. Then he'll give us the intelligence how to conquer over our tendency to deviate from devotional service and our tendency to become evolved in material conceptions of life. And when he sees that we're sincerely trying to make progress in spite of whatever difficulties are presented to us, then he himself will personally appear within our minds, within our hearts, and by his presence, lust, anger, and greed will be burnt away. And when they're burnt away, also the delusions that we have, that somehow or another we have some identity or some interest outside of Krishna. When we experience Krishna's presence, when he reveals himself by the enlightenment and the bliss, then we'll see this is Krishna is the actual object of what I'm searching for in terms of happiness and love. And therefore, our tendency to become distracted by other things will gradually lessen, by other promises of Maya, finding friendship, love, and happiness in something apart from Krishna will gradually diminish. So that's how we conquer sinful reactions, by taking shelter of Krishna. Or as Krishna said in the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, Tasman agana sambhutam ritstam jnana sanatmanaha chidvainam samshayam yogam atishto tishta bharata. These doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed with the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight. So our Krishna consciousness process, our Krishna consciousness movement is a great opportunity to become a great hero. The greatest heroes in the material world are the devotees who are conquering over material illusion. Because as they conquer over delusion or illusion, they can also save others and help them in their process of conquering over the worst thing in the material world, which is forgetfulness of Krishna. Therefore, as explained here, that one can conquer sinful reactions, both the devotees and even the impersonalists, by their processes, conquer sinful reactions. They've also acted piously. And sometimes the impersonalists may get a kind of liberation, but without rising up to the platform of pure devotional service, their activities are not generally permanent. They don't give a permanent result, nor do they lead to the higher stages of devotional service. Therefore, although one may go through the Varna and Ashram system, or even come to a higher level of Krishna consciousness and understand everything quite clearly, but then it's expected that as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, the more we come to the mode of goodness, the more we should become willing to take up what's necessary to help us advance in devotional service, and the more we should be willing to give up the things that distract us from devotional service. Then our faith that Krishna will maintain us, he'll give us whatever we need, and will protect us from falling into a lower state of consciousness. We'll be able to experience that, the more faith we have in Krishna in the process. And then gradually, when we realize how wonderful Krishna is, how wonderful Krishna's devotees are, real humility will develop, and we'll always feel ourselves meek and humble and have no interest outside of Krishna's interests. So this is a great process. If we just try to remember what we're doing and the value of it and try to occupy ourselves as much as possible, then gradually there'll be some improvement, some awakening of higher consciousness, and we'll be able to understand how valuable this process is that Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas and their representatives are giving us, and then we'll get the greatest benedictions possible that are available in the human form of life. Therefore, we should always try to seek association of great devotees, especially Srila Prabhupada, by reading his books and following his instructions, and take shelter of the devotees who are also reading the books and following his instructions, because that's also very pleasing to Krishna and our acharyas, because that's part of the books, telling us how to serve all living entities, not only the greatest ones, but also those who are aspiring to become devotees. If we serve them, then our great devotees will also become even more pleased than if we just serve them only or directly. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Sort of the flickering of a hand. Did someone put their hand up? So what have you understood from this class, Radha Govinda Devi Dasa? What are any realizations you'd like to share?
So it's important to definitely read Srila Prabhupada's books. That will help us not only advance, but also help others advance in Krishna consciousness, and that there is actually a very big urgency of, helping them in a sense to become Krishna conscious. And that's the whole reason why, Srila Prabhupada came to this side of the world. And that's why we should be thankful for him and the previous acharyas.
Thank you. Very nice. Anyone else like to share their understanding or realizations?
I think Mr. Dave had a question.
What's that?
Mr. Saver had a hand up before.
Okay. I keep your hands, if you put your hand up, please keep it up. So then, Kirtapad, do you want to say something?
Gurudev, I just, yeah, I'm just not, how Maya is very good at deviating us even just from the process of hearing it. I think it's kind of my realization that I need to be better at hearing.
Yeah, Maya is expert. She's empowered by Krishna. But Prabhupada also said we shouldn't spend too much time glorifying her, because she's also a servant of Krishna. But we should appreciate her. Prabhupada once said that one of the problems in his followers is that they're not sufficiently afraid of Maya. Therefore, we have to become a little bit concerned about the fact that at every moment this body is changing and it's not getting younger. So we should spend some time becoming serious. So at Ante Narayana Smriti, so at the time of leaving this body, we don't have to come back and take another one. We can go back and live with Krishna eternally in the spiritual world. Therefore, we have to try and make a little bit of progress every day. Recognize Maya for what she is, and then choose Krishna, because that choice will always be there. And when we recognize there's a choice, or to do this for Krishna, or do this for Maya, but we just make choice a little bit more to do it for Krishna and less for Maya, then we'll become satisfied that I'm making progress. And that would be very good. That means that by taking shelter of Krishna, we're conquering over our attachment to Maya. Thank you, Parthasarthi.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, may I ask a question, please?
Yes.
So the last line of the commentary says that unless one is reinstated in his own constitutional position, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Personality to be fully engaged in his transcendental loving service with determination. Do I understand this correctly, that there is a direct intricate relationship between our understanding of our own position and understanding of Krishna's position, and the understanding of our position and understanding of his position is actually the one thing that gives us a determination? Is there the direct correlation?
You have to translate that in Russian?
Yeah, I have to. Sorry. Thank you.
Let me know when you're finished translating, and then I'll.
I'm done. Thank you, Maharaj.
So that's why in the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada mentions that at the time of initiation, the actual connection with Krishna is made. That unless one is actually initiated, the connection is actually not there. Now, what we mean by initiation is not just the formal process of throwing some grains into a fire and getting another name. Unless we actually accept the name as Dasa Anudasa or Dasi Anudasi, that's also not really initiation. So Prabhupada in one lecture, he said initiation means to give up our false ego and identify ourselves as Krishna's servant. Now that's what we're trying to cultivate, obviously, just by becoming initiated. Although the preliminary process before initiation is there, of Shraddha and Sadhu Sangha and accepting a bhajana kriya, regulated devotional service, and then at least the attempt for anartha nivritti. At least the attempt to try to develop our identity as the servant of Krishna. Unless one is trying to develop that identity as the servant of Krishna, and then there's no question of being reinstated in our position as the servant of Krishna. Ye tamam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham. Krishna reciprocates with our sincerity. Therefore, without sincerely trying to make advancement in devotional service, by accepting which is favorable, rejecting which is unfavorable, developing the conviction and the faith that Krishna will maintain and protect us. Actually seeing if my vision is that of a humble servant of Krishna or something else, and whether I have interests outside of Krishna's interests. So we have to check those things and try to develop positive so we can give up the negative. And the process is mam chayo vyavicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samitityatam brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who's fully engaged in devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and comes to the level of Brahman. And the supreme Brahman is Krishna. So, to understand the need to engage in favorable devotional service, which is unfailing, at least to develop that the devotee should understand and take as seriously as they can. Otherwise, our determination will always be, will go up and down like a yo-yo. Sometimes happy in Krishna consciousness, and sometimes trying to be happy in material consciousness. Yes, Gyanadas.
Hare Krishna. I remember that you said that following the instructions and serving the instructions of the spiritual master is more important than this Vapu Seva, because they are available to us at every circumstance at all times. That we would remember the instructions and follow them as best to our capability. Then we can always have the association, spiritual association of the devotees. And then also that when we try to help others to have the association of Srila Prabhupada and Krishna, then we will also they will give their association to us. And in this way, we were able to avoid also this unwanted association by giving them opportunity to associate with Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. Then we are also associating with the devotees and Krishna.
Thank you. That's very good. Nice realizations. Parthasarthi, bro.
Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj, for the class. Well, yesterday was a really nice weekend because I went to the farm. I met the devotees in the Gold Coast, and we have Harinam in the Gold Coast, and was so uplifting to see the people committing sinful activities, becoming happy just with the presence of the devotees, and some of them
Come
even
in.
join.
Very nice.
Some of them wanted to carry the Mahamantra. And then after that, the devotees took me to the farm. So I spent there the night and woke up early in the morning today for Mangalartik. And yeah, it was a really nice weekend sandwich, spiritual sandwich for me. Thank you so much
Very
for
good.
your inspiration.
Thank you all. Kumari Devidasi.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thank you for the lecture. There is a question in the chat, Guru Maharaj. Please.
Okay. Oh, in the chat. Okay. I don't see any in the chat. Here you go. Hare Krishna, Gayatri Devidasi. Dear Guru Maharaj, I've been noticing that devotees are now being initiated on behalf of the GBC and not on behalf of Srila Prabhupada as before. Why is it the case that GBC is now not? Why is that the case as GBC is not Parampara? I don't know anyone being initiated on behalf of the GBC. I think one of the requirements is to say we should follow the instructions of the GBC also. But I don't know if you can be initiated on behalf of the GBC. I've never met the GBC. I've met members of the GBC. but I've never met the GBC. GBC is a body of devotees, so it's very hard to be initiated on behalf of a body of devotees. It would be quite confusing. Still, we should try to follow authority within our intelligence. We shouldn't give up our intelligence, but we should try to follow bona fide authority as much as possible. Okay. Thank you very much. Grandaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Hare
Haribo.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.